This podcast is recorded on Aboriginal land. We pay our respects to elders past and present and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded.
Yeah, exactly. Who wants to do the intro though?
Oh God! See, now we're recording, and now we're doing this. Welcome to welcome to Tom Tanuki, the podcast, featuring subordinate co-hosts. No, you can't do that. It's disrespectful.
I like that. I think that was pretty
I actually
good.
remembered saying that in a chat to you as a laugh. It's not very funny, but I did say that to you in a chat, in our sort of podcast chat.
I remember,
once.
yeah.
So now there's the idea that I really am married to it because I brought it up again. I actually couldn't think of anything else. So now the idea is there that I secretly have designs over taking over the podcast. Delusional man.
I don't think so.
I think we can abandon any pretense of usual introductions to the pod, don't you?
Yeah, why not? Let's just
Mitch-
get into it.
Mitch does the structure and the admin. Jordan, how's your election? How's your election going? How's your election going?
Yeah, my election.
Like I'm like a mum coming in and like asking a teenager, how is your favourite bands going or something? You know what I mean?
Did we want me to introduce it or something? We'll just go up like that.
Yeah, why not? Why not? We're going to include this bit though. I think it's quite funny.
No, we're already in there. Now you can introduce, but there's no. I insist with.
I think that's funny. I think this is going great. See, Mitch isn't here. Shambles. Absolute shambles.
It's just
As it
meta,
should be.
you know what I mean? It's just a meta commentary on the episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Leaving the stuff to be edited out all in. So Celeste, are you going to introduce? Are you going to do it?
Yeah, why not? Welcome to the Radical Online Leftist Pipeline Podcast. I am your omnipresent host, Celeste Little, and I am joined today with...
Two lesser hosts.
Two lesser hosts, subordinate host Tom Tanuki,
And even lesser host, more subordinate, Jordan Banded Lamb.
why don't we, because we haven't done anything like set up Patreon or any of that shit. I know we'll see to the idea of this and that, but like, why don't we all have a ranking system where it's like, I don't know, we could say, for example, whoever's attended the podcast episodes the most, because we've all had our absences here and there. I've had a few lately, but the people at the top of the chain have to actually get money from the people below it. So less attendance, you actually have to start paying. It's like a bit like Amway, you know what I mean? Like the people at the bottom of the chain, we literally like, and then if you have the highest attendance, you're getting paid by the rest of the hosts.
I don't know if welcome to the Radical Online Leftist Pipeline Pyramid Scheme works quite as well.
We'll workshop it. I reckon it should go. I reckon also it should be 50% attendance, and then the other 50 should be voted on by listeners who they think is the best that episode.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then, like, I suppose, you know, the greater the amount of episodes, the more we have to start paying. It's going to become really expensive, you know. Hundreds of episodes in, this is going to send you broke, particularly if you don't attend enough. You know, so it'll become like people will drop off, and then we'll be left with one podcast host, the supreme host in the end.
Perfect.
This is good.
Yeah.
This is like Survivor. So actually, Jordan, how's the campaign going, mate?
It's been busy. It's been busy. I think like real talk kind of stuff. It's been pretty like a little bit depressing, honestly, to not be able to do as much of the housing stuff as I normally do in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And it definitely feels like, at least for me personally, it's been like a trade-off for like electoralism, which is something that I hate and we've spoken about a lot.
Yeah.
But I also know that that's not really, like, that's not the actual trade-off that's happened, because it's like, you know, we've gotten people involved, like hundreds of new people involved, and doing stuff that's really cool.
Yeah.
But for me, it feels like I'm not doing, the stuff that I like to do, and I can't wait for this to be over so I can do that again.
Yeah. Like
but
you
yeah,
can say in the abstract that it'll pay dividends in terms of people and renewed resources and that, but that still doesn't mean that that it's easier to not do what you're passionate about, hey?
Yeah, exactly. Like right now, it's like this is what it's like. But I know in the future it'll be like it's definitely worth it. If you look at it from an investment perspective, and then I can go back to doing, my stuff. Like there's still going to be a housing crisis after this election, unfortunately.
Oh, you sound so negative, I thought this is why we're going to the ballots. We're going to resolve all this, We have these incredible bipartisan mainstream options who are just offering us such resolute alternatives. Resolute is how I'd describe the two bipartisan mainstream leaders on offer, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I like something. I don't know if I go along with that exact word. I'd say cowards, probably. HMAS Cowards. Wasn't it? What was that? Is that the ship? HMS Resolute. I thought, what ship was that? That's a ship, I think.
I don't know. We could just call Australia HMAS Coward.
I think it's fair.
That's a pretty fun euphemism for the country. I've always had an issue with not with the questioning of the term Australia being as it's a colonial visitation or like a place voicing and something. I just don't like the use of the term so-called Australia or like putting it in quotes when you don't have something to replace it with. You know what I mean? I find it really unwieldy because it's like you can say that something's so-called and we all can agree on that. But I'd rather be saying what I'd rather call it. And so why can't we call it HMAS Coward?
I think that's good. Celeste, what do you reckon?
Look, in the absence of umbrella terms due to over 200 languages and 500 dialects, let's rock. Yeah.
It makes more sense, right?
Yeah. That's right. That's a little placeholder. We will find an more appropriate alternative.
Exactly.
More pleasing. So, what do we think about the campaign as regards the mainstream candidates thus far, everyone?
Oh, look, I'm sitting here. I'm just looking at the date because Jordan was talking away, and it suddenly occurred to me that we've got 2.5 weeks before this is all settled. And I'm going to be away for the rest of it, pretty much. But what do I think of the mainstream candidates? Look, I sort of. It's been an interesting week. We've seen Dutton, dither, and wither, and backpedal, and oh god, whatever else. We've seen the resurgence of Jacinta Price in some of the worst possible ways. If you're saying make Australia great again, therefore just borrowing from US populist sort of far right slogan-y things and then having to backpedal that. But this was within days of traditional owners over in Western Australia actually protesting her attendance in that community. It kind of got me thinking, actually. There was a point to some degree in her saying, well, I'm a senator, so I don't have to seek permission to appear anywhere. But she's also a senator who is a senator for Northern Territory and is up for re-election in the Northern Territory because the territories serve only the 3-year terms. So you would think that right now she'd be on the ground there begging, pleading that she gets another bite at the cherry because her fate is in Territory voters' hands. And yet, instead of that, we've got protests against her all over the country. WA a couple of weeks ago, it was New South Wales, and then these silly backpedals for saying the most ridiculous of things. Like, I was already frightfully uninspired by the election. I think that before it was called, my call for the election was we were looking at a minority government. I actually thought that perhaps we'd have an upset and, it'd be the coalition having to make deals. I don't think that anymore. I think that the Labor Party is going to get in by a whisker. But, yeah, I can't say that what they're putting out there is making me fall over myself with glee. It is the most uninspiring crap that I've seen. This election is terrible. It is actually terrible.
We've managed to generate a really uninspiring fucking mainstream bipartisan alternative, haven't we? It's incredible. It's like the ascendant energy of MAGA 2.0 that Dutton, understandably at the time of the election, thought he could ride in, is now withered and broken. I mean, everything that's happening with Trump putting his tariffs and policies into place. There was an article in the Age/Sydney Morning Herald, David Crowe, just supplying a bunch of, survey data on just how unpopular, in a bipartisan sense, like Liberal and Labor voters both, how unpopular backing Donald Trump has now become. And so it's sort of caused Dutton to flip-flop. I was interested since the start of his campaign with the notion of what it would mean to tie yourself to MAGA, because outside of like hyper-partisan far-right parties doing it, like Clive Palmer, I'm sure we're going to get onto Trump or the Patriots later on, like outside of parties like his doing it, which is clearly, they have this kind of, dare I say it, internationalist loyalty to the MAGA branding. It's hard for a would-be mainstream leader to tie himself to the MAGA thing, because MAGA energy is completely about venerating the Godhead. You can't part from him in any way. The MAGA train features no ability to dissent, from the figure. As we've seen with all this sort of like twisting into a pretzel over the course of the tariffs. There's this really fun meme going around of like sort of the NPC meme, but with everyone's got a MAGA cap on going, I love tariffs, but also I love if there's no tariffs, and also I love if there's a pause on tariffs, something to that effect. Because they can't actually criticise anything that's going on, no matter how discordant it is. And yet, so to tie yourself to that brand means, in order to continue to faithfully do it, you cannot question him. And so to run and then it became wildly unpopular, and then he had to do things like go, well, I don't agree with him on Ukraine. Well, I don't know about these tariffs. That he's naturally had to break with him on things. Well, you've invalidated your claim to the MAGA brand, haven't you? And indeed, he's since been backpedaling on it. Like, we've heard fuck all about the Doge thing. They put Jacinta Price in to run Doge. She's not Elon Musk. What's her claim to it?
Yeah.
So he's managed to be completely uninspiring. He doesn't have it in him to do the MAGA thing anyway. He never had it in him. He just reeks of institution,
Exactly, yeah. He's not even charismatic enough.
No. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what I'm missing in this whole thing. Could we just have 1 ounce of charisma? That charismatic leader, where is it? Oh my god!
Oh yeah, it's completely fucked. It's like everyone is just a wet piece of toast.
Yeah, that's just unfortunately too true. And I think that article that you were talking about, Tom, was actually, it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me, because I'm just sort of, what is going on here? What am I missing? It actually managed to knit it together in an idea, which is what I'm witnessing. The Australian public. And I wrote a rant on my personal social media the other day just about the fact that we don't, the really basic political concept, we don't elect leaders in this country. We elect governments. So there's this the positioning, and maybe this is why I haven't been a fan of the focus of Don't Risk Dutton. Like, Dutton's on a knife-edge seat. He could be booted out, but his party could still get in. That's one way that this whole mess might go. But the lack of the lack of charismatic sort of leadership, the lack of actually being able to inspire a electorate in any way that's not pure repulsion, in the opposite direction, when they realise that borrowing Trumpisms when a group of Australians have suddenly decided that actually that sounds like a terrible idea for how it's going on over there. Yeah, it's just been, I don't know, I'm not going to miss the last 2.5 weeks of it, I feel.
No, I don't think you'd be missing out on anything, mate.
My theory is that they're so uncharismatic now because they're so beholden to their corporate interests that it's actually not about them. It's about the people that they're meant to be, that they're paid for to represent. So it's like, please don't have a personality, because it might not be what my donors want, might not be what my corporate interests actually want. That's my theory.
You think that that's what's going on? It's pure terror of annoying the wrong people. It's is that really what's happened here?
I reckon there's something to do with it. Because you look to even conservatives of the past, they would, some of them were funny at least. No, we don't even have that. They're just evil little wizard goblins.
I've never seen a more pathetic face than Anthony Albanese when he went. He gave the David Brent face. We don't like Ricky Gervais in this house, but the sitcom The Office remains the finest miniseries sitcom ever, I think. And the David Brent face, when the climate activist was yelling at him and was being dragged out just a few days ago, maybe a week ago, and you're sort of going, and it was the worst. Why are you both such wet blankets? Albanese's terrified of Palestine, he's terrified of climate, he's terrified of everything. And Dutton's terrified of the MAGA branding that he himself laid claim to. What are they? They can't do anything. They're just scared. They're just both tiptoeing to the finish line.
Yeah.
So something that I thought this is my favourite part of the election so far, actually. And
you have a favourite part. I need this.
Definitely. It happened yesterday as well, and it's white South African slander. So it's a passion of mine. But the One Nation candidate for McNamara, which is my electorate, we all just had to upload our documents, our Section 44 qualification checklist and everything, including, citizenship status, renunciation, all that kind of thing. And the One Nation candidate for McNamara renounced his South African citizenship 5 months after Nelson Mandela was elected. That's a bit suspicious, mate. What happened there? Because that takes a while as well. That takes a couple of months.
It's so funny. I didn't hear about that. It's really funny. What happened there, bro? What was the problem at the time?
Yeah, it's like, oh, fuck, I got to go do something quick. Jesus Christ. Wait a bit, at least.
Look, for all my whinges about Section 44, when it bites in those sort of ways, I kind of appreciate it.
Because it never does. This is the one time I think it's ever done that, and that's fantastic. Yeah. Oh, the Barnaby Joyce one was kind of fun.
Barnaby was kind of good. So was Fraser Anning.
That's a good point, yeah.
But speaking of Fraser Anning, it reminded me, we were going to talk about Clive Palmer's Trumpet of Patriots party, and I remember back Anning's party Anning was running for his in the federal election, and he set up his party, and they did a very similar thing to what Palmer has done in the past and to what Palmer is trying to do this time with Trumpet of Patriots, which is to just field candidates from fucking anywhere. They don't have any standards. You could help your dog to apply, to run for the Senate for this party. And so we had a great time running through all the people they did pick and finding the strangest people. It was fodder for me to do I used to find the most cooked candidates, and you could just focus on Anning candidates alone because there were so many strange people. And, we just have this field day submitting candidates to the media and going, oh, look, this person is a serial murderer, and they're running for candidacy,
Insane.
Yeah. Well, see, this time there's a Trumpet of Patriots candidate, Michael Jessup. He's on bail for a number of serious offences, including stalking and weapons charges.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's got charges related to possession of a knife and trespassing, unlawful stalking, the unlawful possession of weapons, and willful damage.
Just insane. Because they posted all the photos of him, and it's like, of the candidates, and it's like, you've all failed, hard drive checks or whatever. And he was probably the one that's like, he looks kind of normal. And then it's like, boom, definitely the most objective murderer of them all.
Have you guys seen Palmer's party generate much press outside of people complaining about the press, in the Age or what have you? They had those full page ads and people were angry about that. I haven't really seen his party generating much press though.
No, it's been, I haven't seen any press actually, and I do hang around the news sites a lot. It's quite a weird dynamic because I know that they, as I confessed to you folks, I know that they're spending an absolute bomb on advertising and getting out there, because they were running ads during Married at First Sight, which is a terrible show, but has a massive. I will love it too. So dysfunctional. It's everything that Anyway. I watched the hell out of it, sadly, and they were having ads in every single ad break in that, and that was I think I saw 2 ALP ads. I didn't even catch a Liberal ad. I was told that one existed. Trumpet was running the entire time, so that is prime high price advertising revenue time with those Vaseline lens smeared ads that they were running. Like every single ad looks like it had been put through a bad Instagram filter. But yeah, I know they're spending a bomb on getting themselves out there, but then they're not actually generating any interest. How does that happen?
Yeah, because they're also doing the thing that's like, they're obviously trying to be as insane as possible, but they also kind of do want to be elected. So they're not even doing anything that the media is like, look at this, Clive Palmer said this fucked thing. And then that's why now there's this article. It's just about his the amount of money that he's spending, and that the Age is willing to put his ads in do full page spreads and stuff like that. Not talking about it. It's really weird. It's really fucking weird. And the billboards everywhere. Insane. Get a graphic designer. Seriously, they're so shit.
Yeah, I think he's already played all of his novelty cards over the several previous elections. I think even lay people know what his game is and aren't really swayed by it. He has the charm of a wet fish. And I know that he's acknowledged that to some respect. He's trying to step back a little bit in this campaign. But he's not. It's still evident it's his party. And I think without him doing odd things, they're just proofs in the pudding. They're not generating the headlines. And they're not even, there's nothing to them. I can't see them generating the requisite rage or what have you. I feel like this whole entire election is about trying to make sure that and you can see it in Advance Australia's campaign, which is, multi-million-dollar campaign specifically about the Greens, they can't vote Greens not this time. I think the fear there and the fear from Palmer deciding to leap back in and fund all this money to another hyper-partisan far-right group, the fear from Advance Australia and the fear from the mainstream bipartisan parties is that all of this wedge of people might be pissed off over cost of living on the left, might be pissed over cost of living / Palestine, and might leave Labor and go over and deliver a balance of power to left parties. I feel like that's the main theme of everyone's fear this election. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a weird vibe because it's like, yeah, I feel like attacking the Greens, like the person who's, oh, don't risk the Greens this year, who might be convinced by that, isn't probably voting for, trumpets of patriots. They're probably going to vote for Labor. Like, that's a reality.
They'll throw a big socks way or something like,
or they'll go further. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they're like getting convinced by an Advance ad, I don't think they'll chuck our vote, chuck a vote our way. Although it's something really funny that I saw today was someone who hates me, I don't know, was like, they made a video and they had me in the middle next to like Elon Musk and like, I don't know, some other white South Africans, and then had the Afrikaans, like the apartheid South Africa flag, and then like, this music, and it's like, Jordan Vanderlam is a white South African, just like these people. And then in the comments, because obviously they're like, a bit of a cooker, in the comments, there were like Nazis and like super conservatives that were like commenting, yeah, it's okay to leave a country that if it's going to shit or whatever. So like the people that their target market wasn't convinced because they're like, actually, that's a good thing. And it's like, what is going on? What, like, is this the like, One Nation, One VicSoc 2 voter? Like, what is this? What are we seeing here?
Yeah, what is this strangeness? Hang on, so was that campaign advertising? Like someone had sponsored by kind of thing? Where was that?
No, I think it was just a hater.
Just
someone's
hater.
Instagram account. It was started on Discord somewhere. I don't know whose Discord.
Okay. So someone who hates you, but you don't even know they exist, kind of thing.
Yeah, I have no idea who this person is. Yeah. I just thought it was quite funny.
It is
like,
quite
what
funny.
Are you doing?
It is quite funny. So, Celeste, you're going to be away. You're going to be away for the election.
Yeah.
They'll be nice. Yeah. They'll be peaceful. You don't have to deal with all this crap.
Yeah, I will be. And look, let's chuck up a listeners poll because I'm not too sure where I'm going to vote. So my choices are essentially going to be Brussels or The Hague. Send through your recommendations for which embassy I should pop into below, I guess. But yeah,
The Hague is what I'm voting for.
The Hague. I kind of like, both of them have their charms. It's either the International Criminal Court city or it's the home of the EU Parliament city. Like, which way shall she go? But yeah, I'm going to be in Netherlands mainly for the next 5 weeks. So as well as trying to pop in when I can, you might get some at-large content from me,
so good.
particularly when I am envisaging annoying you all with a sound file from when I hit Utrecht, because that in particular I've got a bit of a story about, which if anyone's been following my rebooted blog lately, you might know what I'm talking about here.
I'm excited. I don't know the story though. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'll be having my birthday while I'm there too. But yeah, basically, actually, I wrote it up in an article. So there was an article I wrote in the lead up to Invasion Day this year in Junkie, and it kind of it focused on me doing some family history research, which sure. I started last year. But the important part of that was that well, essentially, I found out that the white side of my family isn't actually completely white, and they have burger heritage, Dutch burger heritage, and my fifth great grandfather was Quinton Darcher, who was a Dutch revolutionary, part of the Patriots that tried to get all the royalists booted out and have democratic elections all across the country. So yeah, Utrecht is where him and his mates made a stand, and he delivered this speech in the town hall calling for democratic elections or elections for the people.
It's so cool.
So yeah, I'm going to be sniffing around Utrecht around about the time of my birthday, which is really exciting, but it's also incredibly exciting to me. You know, my identity is Arundel, or it always will be. That's my entire life experience, but it is exciting to me to find out that you know, that on the other side of the family, which we didn't know an awful lot about, I've got this very, very interesting little bit of history. There was a few interesting ones, and I'm thinking about writing them up in a more robust way, so stay tuned. But this is me just getting my feet on the ground and getting a bit of a feel for this history. Yeah.
I love it.
That's so cool.
I did digging into we have had some breaks in terms of my my Armenian heritage. I was always aware. In fact, people, if there's anyone listening who's watched my stuff for years, then you might know that, you know, several years ago I did a Melbourne Fringe show in which I partly, you know, it was kind of like a look at like esoteric fascism, but also comparing, contrasting some of it with my own family's Armenian heritage. And I, in particular, focused on a branch of my Armenian family that grew up in Calcutta for a time. And anyway, more recently, we've found out more details about, you know, I think it might be, am I talking about my great-granddad or my great-great-granddad? One or the other, can't remember. Anyway, turns out he was, in essence, without going into all the gory details, a philandering fraudster pedophile.
Amazing.
And I've actually thought at length, I've idly mulled with the idea. All I seem to do is idly mull these days. I write notes into a thing, but I've really thought at length about the idea of, like, because when we find out really cool details about our family's history, we're inclined to do things quite naturally, like go there, find out more, you know, seek to understand more and that kind of thing. And like Celeste, you found out some of the coolest things, you know what I mean? It obviously, to hear about things like that reaffirms your sense of radicalism within your family. You know, you're like, oh wow, another branch of my family that's fucking ace and has, you know, a radical spirit. Of course I want to go and find out more about that. What a beautiful reaffirming thing. But now I've got to combat with the idea that I have a philandering fraudster pedophile in my past. And I keep thinking about, what does it do to you if that's your ancestor? Like, what is it? What is the notion? Even though this is not really a spiritual notion that runs deep in my ancestry, but to think of your ancestors sitting on your shoulder, like, what is it? I don't want that one on my shoulder. You know what I mean? But well, there's a lot of thing in white people's backgrounds where they often also, you know, with like the random white products with kind of, you know, like bits of salad, you know, mixed salad, you know, colonial bloodlines, you know, it's often like what white people in Australia, a lot of these white people are like inventing heritages for themselves.
Oh, 100%,
you know?
yeah.
They're finding out that they're looking at their heritage, or they're just pretending they're a Viking, or they're pretending they're Native American. You know, we have this thing, you know, it's part of the colonial person's mentality is to like go out and last samurai it up, or like dances with wolves it up, to go and like lift some random indigenous people's spirituality. You know what I mean? We always want to think we were an Egyptian prince in our past life. We don't want to think we were a philandering fraudster pedophile in the last life.
Actually, I will say, like, you know, there's a couple in my family tree that I wish weren't there, and it has been confronting looking at that. But but you know, from someone whose entire life has been shamed, my goodness, shaped by the fact that I'm an Aranda woman, and that's been my primary identity. What I did find throughout the family tree was a lot of examples, you know, these pretty incredible historical examples of interactions of ordinary people with what was going on socio-politically in the country at the time. And that was one of the arguments I made about how it was that my family managed to forget that we actually, you know, not only were descendants of this particular individual, but also had non-white heritage on that line. My argument was, well, the bloke who brought it to this country died in 1909. White Australia policy came in 1902. You know, it's kind of, it gives, finding out that sort of stuff has given me kind of a fuller picture and a fuller understanding of this country. And from that way, it's been really beneficial. But I think my favorite, I do have a favorite death in the family tree, and I really want to share this one. So,
please.
So on my paternal side, there's this bloke, and he was from Wiltshire. It's one of the many Thomases. Why do white people, by the way, all call themselves Thomas, James, John? You know, it's the same names over and over again.
Pile the names in. Pile them in.
But there was an old news article, and it features his death in it. And basically, the dude was recorded as dying on the outhouse of the local pub.
Amazing.
From apoplexy, and they deemed apoplexy, which is essentially a stroke. But the official reason of death was deemed a visitation from God. So he was drunk, and he had a stroke on the pub outhouse loo.
And he had it coming.
He had it coming, and apparently the second coming happened whilst it was going on. Like, you know, visitation of God.
That's incredible.
Was his cause of death.
Incredible.
So, you know, I just think that's rather it is incredible. Good on you, Thomas Earl. Thank you for being my ancestor.
No, that looks rad. That's rad. That augments one's family tree. I have a great aunt or something like that who I don't know much about her. I think her name was Bessie, and she was, and I know this isn't something we would choose to call someone else. She was mad, and this is what my mum as a child was told. So the details of said madness she's not aware of, but she was prone to try to take her own life. And I know this isn't sounding very fun so far, but bear with me. She jumped off in an attempt to take her own life. She jumped off St Kilda Pier, and this is like what is it? It could be early 1900s. I'm not sure, late 1800s. And the story goes that her britches filled up with air. And instead of actually dying, she floated off and was found in Port Melbourne and was fished out of the bay and found alive.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's right. So she couldn't. Bridges saved her. So anyway, that's my great some amount of greats, Aunt Bessie.
That is cool. Yeah,
it's kind of cool. Saved by the bridges.
The first recorded Vandenberg got executed for falling asleep on the job. Out of prison somewhere, so that's exciting. Apparently we're sleepy for a long time, actually. That's not just a me thing, so that's nice. But Celeste, you said your family, like, kind of through the generations, was involved in social movements. Is that like is that what you were saying?
Yeah, like so look, the Yarrandus side of my family was already pretty well known for political activity, because we've got the Littles and the Perkinses all mixed up in one. That's my direct line. And, you know, that in that you've got people like Charles Perkins, Pat Turner, you know, Bob Randall was my great uncle. these are the sorts of people that I grew up around and just assumed that was normal. So
yeah, that's
so
sick.
it's kind of like having that political activity going on. And then, one of my first protests that I ever went to, which I've recounted this story a few times, but for those who haven't heard it, the first protest that I really remember going to was the opening of Parliament House in 1988 in May, and it was the second of the large convergences of Aboriginal people. The first one had happened on Invasion Day in Sydney to occur that year. So, it was kind of like as well as all these political figures that were just a part of my life and family, I saw the biggest mob of black fellas you've ever seen just marching through Canberra going, land rights now, bicentennial bullshit.
Sick.
And I feel like, those sorts of formative moments have probably led to at least my own gathering of political wisdom over the years. My family is notoriously political, if not always in total agreement. We've actually fielded people from the left and from the right in my family quite regularly. But to know that there was a bit going on Mum's side too. I remember I dug out and showed yous a letter. So you were talking about your sleepy relation and being beheaded on the job. If that wasn't an advertisement for join your union, I don't know what is. But also, I remember showing you a letter of termination that my grandfather received from Carlton United Breweries.
Sorry.
Yeah, he was my maternal
So cool.
grandfather. So other side of the family, my maternal grandfather received a letter of termination from Carlton United Brewery, where he worked as a weighbridge operator. Because he participated in the industrial action that the Transport Workers Union were taking at the time. So they were all, this was in the 70s. A bunch of them all were fired because they were standing on a picket line instead of operating their weighbridges and whatever else. And they were all reinstated when that action was over and when an agreement was made. But to have that letter and then to see these other examples, my great-grandmother ended up a divorced woman because she flatly refused to leave her job at the boot factory and become a full-time wife and mother for her husband. These are the sorts of things. And every single one of these little ones that I've dragged up, these interesting stories, kind of talk about an interaction, a historical interaction with this country and how things were working. And, where members of my family have actually given the state a bit of a headache, even in the smallest ways.
It's so cool.
It is really cool. It's kind of through this, as I said, my identity will always be an Aranda woman, but through this, I've kind of got a fuller picture of how it was that I became me, what has fed into me, and how generationally certain things are passed down, even if people aren't telling you who these people were or they don't have a full picture. There's actually values and ethics that you end up inheriting that you don't necessarily know where they came from. And you when you've mapped them out, person by person, you actually get a better idea of why it is that you are the way you are. Even if you choose to run in the absolute opposite direction because your family's full of fuckheads, it still gives you that, picture of historical echoes. Yeah.
We have an email. Email goes, "Hi all, Mitch, listener since the Not Good Enough days, first time writer, love what you do." Suppose this means this person doesn't love what the rest of the three of us does. Don't worry, we're not
That's
needy.
what I'm picking up.
Are you feeling hurt by that?
Yeah,
I feel
definitely
hurt.
My feelings are hurt.
Yeah, I take that to mean he hates what the rest of us do. Fine.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're reading this while Mitch is not here too.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Fuck
right.
you, Mitch.
Fuck you, Mitch.
Mitch is always present because I do the edits. Thanks, Brad, for your lovely email. I love you too, and you're right to not love my co-hosts because they're dogs.
My question is, what is the most effective way to combat apathy toward the union and motivate others to join? I'm a member of the ETU. I routinely encourage new employees to join, and I frequently punish existing employees about it to no avail. Very few people in my company are members, and the most common reason is that they see no benefit in joining. When I was 16 years old, I got my first job offer. I brought my contract home. My dad, a union man since the 70s, flipped through it, gave me a rant about how they're trying to fuck me, and then sat at a kitchen table with a ruler and pen, crossing out clauses, upping my hourly rate, and telling me if I give an inch, they'll take a mile. I was mortified. I thought that was the end of that job, and I'd have to start looking elsewhere. Rode my bike down to the shop the next day, handed the heavily modified contract back to the manager, and apologised profusely. He faxed it to head office, and I left. Lo and behold, a couple of days later, the manager called me back and asked me to come down to the shop to sign my amended contract. So, for me, the, oh shit, they're actually trying to fuck me moment was day one. Many people I work with, particularly younger people, haven't had that moment yet, and they may never have that moment. So tell me, podcast, Rob, what are the magic words? Explain the art of the deal. Thanks, Brad. I love this question, and I think everyone probably has something to say about it. Take it away, legends. What do you think?
So, I have always been a member of the union. Back when I was working a shitty retail job to get myself through uni, I was a member of a shitty union, but I was still a member. And then
We've all been members of the SDA. It's fine.
Yeah, I feel like the SDA for a lot of people is the first union they join, if not like United Workers, perhaps for food. But yeah, it's sort of in the early days of my post uni career, I managed to kind of unionize 2 workplaces, and it was just. I was a member. I was talking to people. I convinced other people to be members. And then, that was kind of the way it worked out. But I think one of my key moments was talking in a later workplace before I became a union organizer, actually. So I was just a bit of a pain in the ass who was telling people to join and doing the whole safety in numbers pitch. And, we can if we have more of us, we can push for better working conditions and so on. Like, that was my main thing, particularly as an Indigenous worker. When you're working in a workplace that doesn't necessarily take into account your life experiences as an Indigenous worker. So the more of you that you have joining a union and therefore putting pressure on when bargaining's happening or something, the better your conditions can actually be. But I think one of my proudest moments was that I pretty much unionized, apart from a couple of people, a unit that I was working in, and we were undertaking industrial action at that work site. And part of that was a half-day strike. And so, I got the thrill of being able to walk through my place of work, gather up my colleagues, and all of us down tools walked out. And particularly I remember one of my colleagues was like, "Oh, will we get in trouble for being out?" And I'm just sort of like, "No, we're doing it collectively." She was a little bit concerned that she'd be seen as the bad person. But it was, I think that the main thing was, the way that I've always gone about getting people involved is that safety in numbers thing. Unions do get talked about too much in that whole insurance agency for jobs kind of way. When the actual power is the more members, the more people stand together, the more change you achieve. Like, safety in numbers is the whole entire ethos of unions. It's So that's been the main thing, just convincing people that the more people we have, the more influence we can exert, has been really it. Plus, I couldn't imagine ever not being a member of a union myself. I'm still, as a union organizer, I still manage to be a member of 2 other unions.
My moment in which I made the most unionists, created them, helped to create them, was when I was working for I think I mentioned here in the pod before, working for it was quite ideologically conservative sort of an area, and I managed to, over time, just being a delegate, obviously working in there, I wasn't an outside organiser working with the union, I was just in there, I was just doing my job, and I was a workplace delegate, and I managed to double membership in a branch of a department in the public service that was, again, as I say, quite ideologically conservative. I and another delegate would often walk around the floors having conversations, and I think we did our work over time with people. We would sort of play a good cop, bad cop thing, because we found some of the time, like my good cop, I was bad cop. My good cop friend would talk about the benefits that come with union membership and, have sort of civil conversations. And there was the occasional person who would be like, oh, I get cheap movie tickets, I'll join up. Occasionally that happens, But my experience was that the vast majority of people that we managed to get to join were joined through my bad copping. And my bad copping, so to speak, I would say it's ethically good cop, but bad copping, by that I mean moral attacks and guilting. And it's very important to do that over time. I would have conversations with people in which I would explain to them the guilting that I thought was the most effective with people who hadn't had a background in the power of a union and how to join. I would find these conversations with the uninitiated over time a common, because there would be a certain resistance, because a lot of people who aren't union, don't have any background, have only heard the rubbish about them, you know what I mean? They've only heard the bad stories, and they'll offer them up to you, you know what I mean? Oh, why should I pay them? They're not going to help me, and that kind of thing. Well, I would actually do little calculations of, I'll say, how many pay increases have you got? How many years you work here? You work here 15 years. Oh, okay, then. This pay increase, this pay increase, this pay. And we'd calculate up, you know what I mean? There'd be like thousands of dollars in differences between their pay from many, many years ago up to then. And I would sort of point out, well, actually, because a team that you're not supporting helped to negotiate all that pay increase for you, you don't deserve any of it. And now that's a rude, provocative thing to say to someone to some degree. So you don't just do that. I'm not saying go up. I wouldn't go up and just give people a barrage of abuse. There's the positives and the negatives of like joining a team and that kind of thing. But I found that occasionally provoking people on their shaky moral ground, you know what I mean, their resistance was productive in the long term. To occasionally give a bit of a prod, and this is this person in their question, Brad, asked about the art of the deal. I found that occasionally attacking them on their ground, and then going back to the the more productive conversations and saying, oh, here's the power of a union, but not quite letting them stand their own ground, not being too scared. You know what I mean? Like, not being scared to confront them on their own inconsistency, not calling them a scab, but calling them a scab in so many words, explaining to them what that whole notion was. You aren't supporting the team who collectively bargain for your conditions to be held safe, and what does that mean for you to be relying on the effort of people that you aren't supporting? And that worked for me in the long term. So that was the art of my deal. And maybe that doesn't work for every workplace, but it worked for me over time to focus on that angle.
I think so. Like me hearing the question, I feel like it's a two-parter. And for me, I'm hearing that person is feeling a bit apathetic with their own union as a unionist. And I'm also hearing that person is coming up to some anti-union like hostility with their workmates. Did you guys pick that up, or am I just making up the first bit?
I got that sense.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay. So, and I would probably say that there's no magic words. That's unfortunately not how it works. But in terms of in terms of your own apathy, I feel like you are like you would if you're a unionist and you're a passionate unionist, you would be stupid if you didn't feel apathetic right now with the state of the union movement. I think it's pretty shameful, the state of the union movement. So I think that's a good thing that you do feel that. And I would say that if you want to combat that, there is stuff that you can do because, yeah, it's your union and you can change it. And there's, many ways to do that. The most, I guess, effective one is to get involved in any kind of rank and file organizing group that's going on wherever it may be. And, with the blue collar unions, that actually can be really difficult to find, particularly in the ETU and the CFMEU, though they do exist. But yeah, I would have a look on Facebook and stuff. If you can't find anything, literally Victorian Socialists, we have a Socialist Workers Caucus every month. I think it's on a Wednesday night. I think this one's next Wednesday, and it's just literally a bunch of union members, a bunch of workers get together, talk about what's going on in their unions and their workplaces and what they can do to, either shift the workplace or the union and get stuff going. And that kind of answers also some of the second question. I mean, the second part of the question about the anti-union hostility with the workmates, but I want to get to that too, because that's like what I find is that's really common. Like people see the union as a fee for service, and like if you're in a workplace that has an EBA, you can not pay the fee for the service if that's how you view it, and you'll still get the pay raise. And that's whatever. That's just how it works. After the accords and everything like that. Fantastic. But I would say, and this is what I do. If you're that person in that hostile environment, in that potentially anti-union environment, making the political argument wherever you go, not soapboxing or anything like that, not preaching at people, but just being like, I reckon the boss earns too much. And, I just saw his Lamborghini and, where our real pay rates are back to 2010 levels. Our real pay levels are declining. If you're making little arguments like that all the time, as soon as one of your workmates are in trouble at work, you're going to be the first person they come to.
They'll come to you.
And that's when you've got them. And that's when you can convince them of the argument and the importance of, the union and more importantly, collectivism and, sticking together and stuff like that. And that's how I would probably answer that kind of question as I saw it in two parts. And I hope it wasn't a bit too preachy. But yeah, I think about it a fair bit.
I wanted to, it actually reminded me that I'm only really like coming up with memories because I haven't worked in that kind of industry or workplace for some time. And I was just thinking about my spiels, but none of that walking around guilting people would have meant shit or would have counted shit with people who were resistant to me if I hadn't have done what you also suggested before, which is I represented people in the workplace. I actually had a pretty fucking useless union, to be honest. They were, you know what I mean? The member service centre were fucked, you know what I mean? They couldn't be bothered assisting individual people. They're a union that still is like that now, actually. But I went to bat for people, and we had a lot of people join on one day in which there was a notoriously horrible middle manager in there, and I just, without going into the details, I made her cry. And she just didn't like being bailed up, and I was independent in that role, and I managed to do it. And people saw that, and some of those people who were quite ideologically against it actually joined not long after because I think they saw that someone was actually helping people in the workplace who were getting stung by a horrible manager, and that is something that. That's you, as you talked about, your rank and file organising. Do it yourself. Be seen by these people to be helping. And then it's not like, join the union. And they're not talking about the pay rate then. They're like, no, I will help you. If you can say that, and if you can figure out ways for you as the delegate or whatever it is, a person on the floor to help them, Well, that's real solidarity. That's your camaraderie. And people see that and then they don't mind, you know what I mean? If you do a bit of the guilty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly,
They see
yeah.
that you're actually putting
Yeah.
you're putting your body on the line in a way, you know.
Yeah, because then the union isn't this abstract body that exists that you pay your fees to every now and then. It's like, it's you. It's literally you. It's a person
Yeah.
who helped someone when they needed help. And that's
right.
so
And
much
you
more
don't get the
effective.
fucking fees, you know. If you're in
No.
that position, you're not the one getting the fucking fees, you know what I mean?
Definitely
so you
not.
can say, well, no, I'm doing this on principle. Yeah.
So I want to jump in now too, because of course I do. Doing the edit, listening to this, it's such a good question. I just wanted to give a basic sort of example of the times when I've managed to increase union activity. Something I've talked about on the show a bunch of times is by getting wins. And I feel like a big problem with the union movement at the moment is this idea of getting membership first, because we need to get membership and then we can get wins. And I just don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think what you need is to show what you can do at whatever level you're at, and following that basic principle of if you build it, they will come, right? If you do things that work, people go, oh shit, I could join up. And so, like, there's a couple of examples for me. I used to work in a pretty shit job in a call center a few years ago when I was studying, and I was one of the few union people there. And I had a couple of moments where management were clearly trying to fire people for ridiculous shit. Like monitoring time in toilet breaks, monitoring lunch breaks, going over a break by 15 seconds would get you on a performance review shit. And because I had a union, and so when this shit was pulled on me, I had the meeting where you're allowed a support person because you're going on a review plan type thing. And so I had my union rep come in, which I'm totally allowed to do. And they came in and just said, this is bullshit. Here is why. Here's the legislation. Here's what you can't do. So we're not doing this. And people on the floor saw this. They knew about this. They knew that basically management would have a harder time dealing with me specifically because I had union backing. And that helped people know about the union, right? When there were problems with management, people would start to come to me, like the others had just been talking about. But one of the things for me, this is a fucking weird story. One of the things for me that really saw a spike in union membership on the floor was we worked out of a high-rise building with lots of other different businesses, and we had a moment where the building itself was doing a fire drill for the whole building. And it was this whole building, every single business, everyone has to leave and go to an evacuation point just down the road. And the alarm starts and a whole bunch of people go, and us in the call center are told, no, don't worry about it, keep working. And we're like, well, that's fucking weird. Not sure about that. And the alarm didn't turn off, right? So it wasn't just the case that the alarm went off for a bit and everyone's like, oh, here's the drill and we leave. We're supposed to be on the phone to customers or chatting with customers, sending emails and stuff with a literal fucking fire alarm going off. So after a minute less, I'm up, I'm talking to people. There are some very distressed looking people in my team, just freaking out because a fire alarm's distressing at the best of time, let alone while you're still trying to do work, let alone trying to talk to people on the fucking phone. So I keep talking to, my line manager and his boss, and I'm like, can we fucking go? No, we should stay. It's all good. Let's go. Actually, this is fucked. I eventually get enough people, a critical mass of people who are looking genuinely worried, to get up and we go to management and say, we're going. And in that instance, it was less that I was in a union and more that it was a really sort of distressing moment where I had enough support behind me to say, we don't want to tolerate this. And management just went, yeah, no, this is actually pretty bad. We should go. But the big thing that happened afterwards was that I felt empowered to fucking draft an email about how fucked it was, why it was bad, what they should have done better, obvious, what we expect in the future, yada, yada, yada. But because of the fact that people knew I was in a union and so I was harder to get rid of, and because I took a slight initiative in that instance, and because the situation was so fucked and people were so off management, I asked as many people as I could, if they would co-sign this email with me. And a few didn't, but most did. And that caused a huge reaction from management. I remember one of the managers came by and was like, "Oh, how did you get time to do up this email?" I was like, "Oh, just between calls." He's like, "Oh, okay. Yep, cool. And there was enough sort of mass behind it that, meetings were called. They apologized. They said, "Look, we were told it was only going to last 15 seconds. We were waiting for it to turn off." And in that meeting, I also, I'm a loudmouth enough to do it, but I took the initiative to say, "And if anyone has any further issues, you can come to me first if you really want." And I didn't clear that with management clearly because they didn't fucking want me to be saying shit like that. But it was about doing something that felt like a win. I didn't have to wait for union backing. I just had to sort of have the bravery that comes with being in a fucking union to tell management in front of other workers, "You won't treat us like that." And to get people on side with me in what was clearly an egregious situation. They felt the power of my union just in this ephemeral way that the bosses couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't just fire me for some unrelated reason. They couldn't make an example out of me. They had to fucking deal with it. And that was a win that had everyone else on the floor going, "Oh shit." Like, Mitch and a couple of the other union people that were the first to sign on to this email. Yeah, that's actually pretty powerful. I like feeling empowered. So my main thing is do things that help people. Tom was talking about that as well, of being the person that someone can go to. Don't wait for union activity. Don't wait for it to be a specifically union issue or to get a union rep in or whatever. Be helpful and be brave. Be loud. Be courageous, knowing that you have union backing so you can do the shit that your workers deserve to have but are rightly fucking worried about their job. You don't have to be. You have fucking power behind you. So if you're in the union, it is your responsibility when you're at work to not just be someone that they can come to if they've got a problem and you can tell them about the union. And it's not just to do official union stuff. It is to be the person in the workplace that leads by fucking example. And when you do that, I promise you, people will come on board. You do not have to get them signed up first. Just show them what you can fucking do with union power. And then people will go, "Oh shit, that's actually pretty good."
Good question. Great question.
Thanks for that. Can everyone please keep asking us great questions so that we can give hopefully great answers? Because I loved answering that one. That was rad.
Yeah, that was fun. Let's do more of them.
I think that's us for the week then, isn't it?
I think we did great, yeah.
You did great. Thanks, everyone. Celeste, have the best time, mate. See you when you're back. Send us through some missives, like you said. I hope you do.
Yeah, and also please don't get mad if I respond angrily. It's because I'm jealous.
Yeah, no, I will. I'm looking forward to it. I think that in this position of privilege, I'm just going to acknowledge it. But getting the hell out of this country every so often is so good for my brain. I know other people who feel that. And I'm really, really privileged that I can actually do that for the next 5 and a bit weeks. So I'll be thinking of, well, not much at all, really.
You've earned it, I feel like. It's time.
Yeah. But
great.
hopefully I will have some missives for you. And actually, listeners, if you've got any tips with regards to politically interesting places around the Netherlands that you want to send through to me to check out and all of that, please do. Or people I should connect with and all of that. I'd look forward to that sort of stuff as well. It's sort of we talked a little bit. I will be jumping the border into Germany for a small part of it. And I remember we talked a little bit about the protests that had been kicking off in Germany with regards to, the coalition-y sort of agreements that were happening with the far right and the community responses to that. So I am a little bit interested to see what's going on and, what people are taking to the streets for. And I will be in Europe during May Day, so that'll be good. Yeah.
It'll be exciting. Yeah, and we'll be expecting a report back as well for the podcast.
No worries.
It'll be great. Thank you for listening, everyone. We will see you soon. Maybe minus Celeste, but also maybe a little bit of Celeste.
Mitch, if you're listening and you're editing later on, leave this bit that I'm saying in, and also if Celeste is about to introduce it, just leave that there after a few minutes of chat. That's my demand. That's my demands.